Welcome into another edition of the PHNX Mercury podcast. I'm your host, Espo, joined by Hayden, as always, and we've got plenty to talk about this week. Unfortunately, none of it is victories. Hayden, how are you, my man?
I'm doing good. I wish I could say the same for our beloved Phoenix Mercury, but hopefully they'll turn the tide soon.
Yeah, 3 games since the last time we talked to you, 3 losses, and look, we can start with the loss in Seattle and take a look at it. But before we get into specifics as a whole, I mean, it's concerning. I mean, to say the least, it's concerning right now what's going on with the Mercury. And these weren't close losses. They were large losses, and I'm starting to hit that point of break glass in case of emergency.
We talked last week about it might be too early to hit the panic button. I don't think it's too early anymore. I think my hand is gonna mash that panic button maybe the rest of the season at this point.
Yeah, I mean, let's start in Seattle, in Phoenix against Seattle. It was not a great game, obviously, as the Mercury fall 83-69. Sophie Cunningham and Sutton showed up, but overall, just a disappointing and lackluster performance for this team.
Yeah, Phoenix didn't have a lead at all in this game. And I was like, look.
Is that bad?
Okay, no disrespect to Seattle. When you're playing Seattle, they're expected to be in the lottery, right? I mean, Sue Bird's retired, Brianna Stewart's out, Jewel Lloyd is fantastic, but it turned Ezzy McGregor, but that's about it. And you come in, and Jordan Horston, who's their rookie, played probably the best game of her career. 13 points, 14 rebounds, a career high in rebounds. And it's just like I said earlier, Phoenix didn't have a lead at all. And against a team like that, when you have your 2 stars, it's just unacceptable.
Yeah, and this seems to be kind of just the way this has gone this year so far. And we'll get into this a little later, some of the reasons why, what we're feeling. But at this point, you talk about Seattle being a lottery team. It feels like you have to start looking at the Mercury as being in that seat as well. And that was a Commissioner Cup game. Obviously, the Commissioner Cup's not going to be in their future at all either, as they've struggled in those games. But the road trip, you hoped you got the win in Seattle because you knew the road was going to, or the win against Seattle because you knew the road was going to be tough in this 2-game trip that they took. Friday night, another game on Ion, so the country got a chance to see this, and it was again an even worse, game for the Mercury. They lose by 19 against the Mystics, 88-69, and I get that DT and Brittany were out, but you still want to see more effort than you saw. You want to see more of a spark than this team was able to provide.
Yeah, and I mean, you said it best. Your 2 stars are out. You expect a lot of people to step up. And granted, it's hard to fill the role of 2 superstars, right? But still, I mean, Brianna Turner is sliding back into the starting lineup. I mean, 5 points, 7 boards, 2 blocks. She played really well against Elena Deladon for the most part, but it was Washington's role players. Brittany Sykes with 16 points, plus 18 in the box score. Ariel Atkins, 11 points, but a plus 24 in the box score, 3 blocks, a steal, 5 assists. And it's just, I don't know how I can say it other than you can't forget about the other players. On most teams, there's 1 superstar, but we have to remember that there's 4 other players on the court at all times too, and you can't lose sight of those because those players were ultimately, the reason between Sykes, Atkins, and Meng. I mean, they had 41 of their 88 points just with those 3 alone.
Well, and look, I know when you're missing BG, you're missing a large portion of your offense. Diana has been less than efficient at times this year, but still scoring at a decent clip. But looking at this, it makes me kind of wonder about the roster construction and exactly how this team was built, knowing that Diana at 40 likely isn't going to play every game, not knowing, admittedly, not knowing what you were going to get from Brittany Griner coming back this year. And you look at the rest of it, Sophie Cunningham, obviously, continuing to kind of emerge as that potential future star, but still not enough to just carry the team by herself. I wonder how they put this together and how they looked at it and thought this could be a team that could sustain. I get it. Skylar Diggins-Smith, part of this team, but out with the maternity leave, that also hampers you. But even looking at that, it's like, okay, was there enough depth here to withstand, having anybody out? And when you are at full strength, is there enough here that can win together as a cohesive unit? And we just haven't seen it yet this year.
Yeah, I mean, I will say though, one of the better pieces that the Mercury picked up was Shook Sutton.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's been I've deemed her as the model of consistency between her and Sophie Cunningham, and I mean, she even double figures moved her to the starting lineup, and she's had multiple games of 5+ assists. And after Tuesday's loss, I mean, she spoke about how she's basically ready to answer the bell for whatever Phoenix needs.
Yeah, I just know that, that's the role that I have on this team, and I take account, like, I do it. And, I come in every day, and I try to do that every single game, just because I'm able to. I'm really good at it, so that's just something that I want to continue to bring to this team, and continue to bring, excitement to our offense, but also being a really good defender and defending really great players as well. So I'm just really thankful to be on this team. I'm learning a lot, but we got to keep getting better each and every day, and we will.
I want to shout out Shug because she always has the hardest offensive player on every team, and for her to keep that intensity on offense after she's defending the best players on their team the whole freaking game, you're doing great.
I give her a lot of credit, and basically she was in a semi-pro league, mm-hmm. comes in here and is playing her role very well. But it's somebody you should not be expecting to be the one kind of setting the tone for this team, and she's been pushed into that role and done admirably when you look at it. But they've got a lot to figure out. And they've had a lot of players step up. I mean, they lose to the Liberty on Sunday, 89-71, another tough loss. But they've had people step up. I just don't know that it's enough.
Yeah, you said it earlier with the roster composition, and I can bring this home every single time we're in this studio or we're in the main studio. I can say this. I can basically say this until the day I die. Like, they don't have any post players. Mm-hmm. They don't have anybody that can go out and rebound besides Brittany Griner, besides Brianna Turner. And it's just, you reap what you sow. You reap what you sow. I don't know what Phoenix was expecting when, I love Sophie and Michaela. They're great players, and they'll bring this up in one of the clips that we'll show a little bit later. I mean, but they're not post players. They're perimeter players. Yeah. Unless if you have somebody that's going to get 14, 15 rebounds a game and just be that defensive force, which obviously Brittany Griner is, but she's a much more elite shot blocker than she is a rebounder.
And I think the toughest part is, the clock's ticking on DT's time. Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly, Brittany's been in the league for a while now as well, and you have to wonder, how long does she want to play? And you have those pieces, and it feels like there's been so many wasted years over the last handful that you need to capitalize. Even their run to the WNBA finals against Chicago was a roster that underachieved most of the year. The fact that we're seeing it with the Suns, and I hate to compare the two, but since you're under the same ownership, mm-hmm. you're seeing the Suns make that run, build around, do as much as they can. And I hope the Mercury follow a similar path, whether it's trying to figure out things at the trade deadline and leveraging future draft capital, whatever the case may be, and trying to figure out, is there a way to plug some of these holes, sneak into the playoffs, hope, Brittany and DT and Sophie can do something. But because, they have a lot of people who have stepped up this year, but you need more top heavy talent, top level talent to supplement that.
Mm-hmm.
You've got the bench pieces, I think. It's how do you fill out a starting five that gets the job done next to Sophie and Brittany and DT.
We see a lot of this, not just in the W, but in sports in general. Like, when you bring in players that are win-now players, I say that term very, very loosely. When you bring in win-now players, it's a temporary fix to a long-term problem. And that's what I see here. And I'd love to go more in depth a little bit later about this, but I just feel like just rip the Band-Aid off.
Yeah.
Just be willing to suck for a couple years and get some good draft capital, because they don't really have any. Their pick last year went to Chicago, or this past year went to Chicago. And I think either their pick in 2024 or 25 is going to New York or Indiana as a part of that 3-team trade that sent Michaela here.
We can discuss thoughts on that soon, but I want to hear Coach Nygaard talk a little bit about how some of these players that we were talking about have stepped up in the absence of BG and DT.
Yeah, I mean, these kind of things happen, right? People not available, so it's opportunity for others. I thought we saw positives from several of our players. Clearly, Michaela had a really nice game for us. She was very aggressive. I was impressed with Sophie's leadership. Mariah and Shug were great. Breezy, I thought, did a great job on Deladon, and Shay gave us great minutes off the bench too. She's still coming back from injury, and I thought she gave a great performance too. So, that you got to play the game, and no matter what the circumstances. And I was proud of our team for their effort tonight.
I'm all for being proud, but
I mean, what is she supposed to say though? She can't say, I mean, we can sit here and easily say, "Hey, man, that game sucked." But if your coach comes out and says that in a locker room that I'm imagining is already a little stressed out and even a little less than optimal in terms of their mentals, I don't think you can come out and say that. I mean, plus it doesn't seem to be her style either. You know?
Yeah, I think we're just two different people in some aspects. But look, I understand. Players talked about this too during the week, that the whole BG incident in Dallas took a mental toll. And I can only imagine what happened there. But still, I mean, Nygaard says time and time again, it's basketball. Like, it doesn't matter. You gotta go to work. And granted, yes, you're playing Washington, who's a really good team, who some people say might actually go to the WNBA finals, and some people even say might win it all. But there's just, I don't know. I don't know what's really going on.
I mean, you look at it and playing the Mystics and the Liberty, that's not an easy 2 games in 3 days, especially going from the Phoenix time zone on Tuesday out there east and playing and then on Sunday playing an early game. So even the body clock isn't quite where you expect it as a player. They're overmatched. They have been for most of this season. That's why they're struggling the way they are. And I get it. You can, have increased effort. You can have increased team chemistry, but at some point, talent is where it is, and you can't outwork talent sometimes. Sometimes you are just overmatched, and I think that was the case against the Mystic and the Liberty. You just were overmatched in those.
Yeah, I mean, you said it best. I think the New York game showed a lot more promise, I would say. I mean, they were in it, I would say, until the last 3, 4, 5 minutes of the game, when, like you said, I mean, when you're going up against Breonna Stewart, Jonquel Jones, actually no, Sabrina Ionescu wasn't playing, but still, those two alone, like,
yeah, I mean, it stretches to 18 points because you can hang around for a while, but eventually you get tired, you don't have the depth, and you just get outplayed, and that's what wound up happening here is they get outplayed, and they're gonna need a lot of chemistry and a lot of increased effort to outwork that, and I don't know that you can until you get at least BG back and hopefully both her and DT back at some point.
Yeah, I mean, even if they're out, let's just say for the foreseeable future, I'm using that loosely here, but even if they do, there was a lot of promise. Sophie Cunningham talked a lot about that promise, and we just want to share what she had to say about the teams. The teams, basically how everybody stepped up.
We fought. There's a lot of people who haven't seen those types of minutes the whole season, and so when you have two of your stars out, I mean, it makes it difficult because a lot of the offense and defense is run through them, and the schemes are set for them, and so when both of them are out, everyone has to step up, literally everyone. And so I'm just proud of the fight that they showed. Definitely need to catch our rhythm in chemistry with that group as well. But overall, I think that we did an okay job.
I like that Sophie is stepping up and trying to be a leader.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what that is in that moment, is her trying to give credit to her teammates, play the role of leader, because she is the de facto leader right now on the floor and off it, with BG and DT not playing. So I like that she is embracing that role.
Yeah, me too. And you saw it a little bit last year when Tina Charles left and she slid into the 4 and was just dominating. I mean, I think she still holds the record for most consecutive games with 2+ threes made, which with 17. But I mean, she loves New York. I don't know what it is. I just feel every time she's played New York, I mean, had a career high 21 in the playoffs, basically in that, kind of wild card game, if you will, to send the Mercury. And that was actually the year they ended up going to the finals.
Yep.
Balled out against them then. Last season, I think, had over 20 points twice. And now, 27 points. And mind you, she's being guarded by Rihanna Stewart, Benijah Laney, who's a great two-way player, and just efficient too. 9 of 15, 5 of 10 from 3.
That's the number that's impressive. Shooting 50% from beyond the arc on more than 4 shots is impressive, and she continues to do that. She's a sharp shooter. So that is the bright spot to me, is what Sophie's been able to do on the court, obviously, but then stepping into that leadership role. This will benefit her in the long run, because this is experience that she needs to take that next step.
Absolutely. And Sophie's still only 26.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if the Mercury wanted to, if they really wanted to rebuild, it's not like a Brittany Griner situation where, not to say that BG's past her prime at all, but like it's looking more towards the end as opposed to like just getting into the prime. Whereas for Sophie, it's like she's just about to sort of hit her stride, if you will.
We talked a little bit about roster construction earlier, and you bring up Tina Charles, and I kind of wonder if that was the end of the big swing era here, trying to that went so poorly. I've never heard that a team agreed on basically a divorce from a player. I've never that was a first for me in a lot of ways, and I imagine that creates some pause and hesitation on how big of a swing do you take? What is the reality here? Was some of this roster construction because they truly didn't know what they were going to get from Brittany Griner? And if you weren't going to get, the Brittany that you had before, then you knew that it was basically time to make big changes in terms of this team. There's a lot we're still going to have to find out, but man, Sophie has hit that point. She's entered that prime. So if you're Jim Pittman in that front office, you need to start figuring out what the long-term plan is here. And, it doesn't get easier on Wednesday. Tomorrow, it's a 12:30 game against the Las Vegas Aces, like one of the most dominant teams we've seen in the W, an unbelievable amount of talent on that roster. So that's not going to be much easier. And I think in a season you hit a point of no return. And I know it's early, but I think you're looking at that July 1,
Yep.
that against the Lynx, that may be the demarcation line where you're like, we've hit that point of no return. And is it time? Do we, at the deadline, do we sell?
Yeah.
Do we look at doing that, or are we committed to a point where we don't believe that's an option?
Yeah. You know what's interesting with Tina Charles was, I mean, she was great when she was here. I mean, regardless of all the locker room stuff, because players were pretty vocal about how she was in the locker room,
Yeah.
but still a great player. I mean, 17 points, nearly 8 rebounds. I mean, we could use those 8 rebounds right now. That's for damn sure. But like, I think when the team created its roster ahead of this season, I think they wanted Brianna Turner to make an offensive leap, and it just hasn't been there. And I think that's why Michaela's in the starting lineup and Breezy's not. Because when Breezy's in the starting lineup, your defensive rebounding, they skyrocket because she's a naturally great rebounder. We saw when she played the 5 numerous times and guarding players like Tierra McCowan, Asia Wilson, and holding her own against some of those superstars. I mean, even on Friday, holding her own against Elena Deladon, who only had 17 points and only had 1 rebound.
Yeah.
But still, I'm with you where I think next week during the 3-game homestand, it is the point of no return. Where if you keep losing, I think if you're Jim Pittman, I just think you blow it up. I think you know who you're going to rebuild around. You know you're going to rebuild around Sophie. You know you're going to keep Breezy because those two are on contract long term. You know that Michaela is still, I think could be a building piece to this team. Still only in her 3rd season, but
the problem is you're not moving on from DT, and you're not moving on from BG. So is the big change you could make, and you can trade certain pieces that aren't long term, but is the big domino to fall coaching? And I hate to ask this because I don't like to call for people's jobs, but the reason it becomes even more interesting is the New Orleans Pelicans let go of Teresa Weatherspoon. A name that had been mentioned here before, and the Pelicans kind of said to her, no, you got a future here. She doesn't anymore. They let her go. Is that a name that is enticing enough, that is believed in enough, that you could bring her in and maybe it stabilizes some of this? Vanessa Nygaard has been dealt a very difficult hand in terms of injuries, the BG situation, but there's also always been questions about her experience or lack thereof. Was she ready for this role? And when you have a potential option like a Teresa Weatherspoon, who's some felt was being groomed for larger things in the NBA, not just the W, could she become for lack of a better term, your Becky Hammon?
I think so. And real quick, I want to pull up Aya's question because that's been up there for a while, and just want to show the love. But yeah, definitely, I think so. When young stars like your Zion Williamsons, your Brandon Ingrams of New Orleans say really good things about you, and those guys are, I would say, easily top 15 to 20 players in the league, I think that's a very good sign. And they said a lot of the similar things with Becky Hammon. Becky Hammon's, a great coach, great play caller, knows how to get the most out of people. And again, I love Vanessa Nygaard as a person. I think she's phenomenal. But I was even talking with my dad about this. And in all sports, winning matters. Production matters. And
I mean, that's in most cases all that matters when it comes to these jobs, unfortunately.
Yeah, and Nygaard, you said it best. She was dealt a terrible hand. She's honestly been dealt a terrible hand with this situation in Dallas. BG and DT both being hurt. It seems that she can never get a break. But still, at the end of the day, I mean, I'm still of the opinion that Skylar Diggins-Smith was the reason that the Mercury were in the playoffs in the first place.
Yeah.
And I mean, she was absent with the team. We now know why. She was on maternity leave, but still, like, you have your best player. And the thing that concerns me the most, Espo, was I remember that press conference back in early 2022 in January, where Jim Pittman said, we looked at about 20 other coaching candidates.
I mean, it was
Who
a
else
thorough
are you
search.
looking at?
Yeah.
After a thorough search at 20 candidates, I would love to read that comprehensive list.
My guess is DT had a large hand in the
can't
hiring, and you know what? She is the GOAT. So you have to respect.
the GOAT.
But honestly, at some point, you look at it and you go, okay, can another coach come in and be that change? Because again, you're not getting rid of DT or Griner, so you need a voice in the room that can change things, and maybe that is a Teresa Weatherspoon. Maybe it isn't something that happens this year. I don't know. I'm obviously not in the Mercury front office, but when you look at the results of these games, and the assumption is you'll have another one on Wednesday against Las Vegas that's a double-digit loss, there has to be some counter move. You can't continue to allow your team to play in such a manner. And Matt Ishbia, the owner, has shown on the other side of things that he's not willing to. He wants to make a splash. He talks about how he wants both the Mercury and the Suns to be a top flight organization, a blueprint on how to do things, and that championships are the number one goal and really the only goal in it. So at some point, and I know he's a little busy right now, but at some point, I think you look at it and you go, okay, this is not in the framework of what we're actually hoping to accomplish.
Yeah, it's again, like I said, it's really tough because with contract situations and everything, but I still think the best move would be just to start from scratch. But the thing that really shocked me the most is, like, Phoenix has been a winning organization. They have 3 titles. They've been to the WNBA finals 5 times. I think in either their inaugural or second season.
Believe it was the second.
I think it was 97.
I don't know if it was 97. That would have been the first season. You're challenging my. Michelle Timms was the point guard there. Jennifer Gillum was on the roster, and Cheryl Miller was the coach. I just don't remember which particular year it was in my youth. So,
but yeah, I mean, it was early, right?
Yeah.
In the Mercury, they've always been a model of consistency, and with Diana Taurasi, the beauty is that, like in 2021, they can underperform, but as long as you have DT on your team, you can make some serious noise. But now I think she's sort of towards the end of her rope in that way. And I think if you're Phoenix, BG, DT, and Sky all make up probably at least 50% of the cap.
Yeah.
And if any, I mean, Skylar went publicly calling Vanessa Nygaard a clown. That happened last season.
Yeah. There was that.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're Pittman, I mean, you could trade that. You could trade her. You can get some good draft capital. I'm just load up on assets, because look at what Vegas did, right? Asia Wilson, Jackie Young, Kelsey Plum, all, I think with the exception of Jackie Young, all first overall picks. And that's their core.
Yep.
Their core is players that they've drafted, and Phoenix has drafted, I believe, and don't quote me, but Diana Taurasi, Brittany Griner, Sophie Cunningham, and Caddy Sissoko. At least those are all who are on the team. Just players that are drafted. Technically, Brianna Turner, it's a draft day trade, blah, 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 blah. But still, like, a lot of the players they sign, they haven't really gone out in the draft and really made a splash. Hopefully they could do that. Hopefully they could do that soon. Hopefully it wouldn't be in the top 2. But if it is, I ain't going to complain. I got no complaints. Call me Offset and Drake. I got no complaints right now.
So I'm going to I go back to 1998, the second WNBA finals. Mercury Comet 3-game series,
Okay.
and the Mercury lost. So.
Dang it. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we already knew that. That wasn't a that wasn't a spoiler alert there. So, yeah, well, I think, any final thoughts for you before we head out of here?
You know what? If they blow it up, which they should, Jim Pittman, if you're listening, you should blow it up.
Hi, Jim.
I'm telling you, you have two of the best prospects of maybe the last decade plus in Paige Bueckers and Caitlin Clark. And the beauty is that if you pick one, you have two options.
Mm.
And I think Paige Bueckers or Caitlin Clark could be your DT of the next 10, 15 years. I genuinely believe it. Caitlin Clark, she's a great rebounder for a guard. We need that. They need that right now.
Yep.
The Mercury need that right now. Paige Bueckers is a phenomenal shot maker. I think easily the smoothest player I've seen at the collegiate level. Can just get to her spots. Great 3-point shooter, but I'm still of the opinion. I know it's really early. I know it's so early. We're not even 10 games in.
Yeah, but
I'm just saying, blow it up.
I mean, it's early, but at some point you have to also understand the reality of situations.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, would it be great to make a magical run if we're sitting here 2 months from now? Well, I'm happy to eat my words. If there's some magical run, I've done it before on our shows, but yeah, I think there needs to be an eye towards the future for sure. So he is Hayden. You can follow him. Where can the good people follow
They can follow
you?
me on Twitter at Hayden Silly, and yes, Silly is my last name. I might change that to be my actual Twitter name.
Yeah, maybe you should. And then you can follow me at Espo. You can follow the show at PHNX_Mercury. We will be back here next week, hoping to have a very special guest in here. So our tone may be slightly different next week with our special guest, but you can join us back here. We'll be back at our normal time, 5 p.m. on Monday. So for Hayden, I'm Espo. We'll talk to you next time here on the PHNX Mercury podcast.